All right, finally on the road. Welcome back once again to North Toowoomba, Queensland, Australia. Today we are finally getting around to it. The owner's review of the BMW R1300GS. I've been trying to do this for a little while now. So I'm gonna do this a little bit differently than I think you would see from most videos, including my own, different to my own as well. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break this review up into a few different videos. The first couple are gonna focus on the comfort of the bike, the engine, the suspension, and the handling. You know, the real major components of the bike. If you're interested as to why I'm doing this, just keep watching. If you don't care and you just want to get straight to the review, just look down in the index. I have this video all indexed for you so you can ignore my pointless rambling. Still here? Great. Okay, so the reason that I'm doing this is because, well, first of all, it took me a long time to get this video together. I was originally going to do an owner's 1,000-kilometer review, but that 1,000 kilometers just came and went very quickly, as did 2,000. And then my camera mount broke, and it took a while to get a new one. And then I got sick and injured, and it took me a minute to get back out onto the bike. So then all of a sudden, I was at 4,000 kilometers. I'm gonna take a quick break here to do my figure eights, and then we'll talk about it some more. Okay, figure eights are completed. It's amazing how choppy they get if you don't do them regularly. I was out for a ride last night, and it was fairly cool. Cool enough so that even though I didn't really need it, I used the heated grips and heated seat, which really are just wonderful on this bike. Anyways, like I was saying, 4,000 kilometers, 5,000 kilometers. In between that time, I was trying to get this video together, and it just wasn't happening. I'm not exactly sure why. I just wasn't liking what I was coming up with. I don't do a lot of scripting. Most of this is improvised, and that happens sometimes. But I finally at one point got something together, and it was a problem because when I put the whole video together, it was over 2 hours long, which is way too long for something like this. I love stuff like this, and even I'm not going to watch a 2+ hour long video review. So I decided what I'll do is I'll just break it up into several videos, put them all on a playlist. You can watch them or put them on in the background whenever you please. And I really would love your feedback on this. What do you think of this format? Do you think this is a good idea or a bad one? And you know, maybe watch the video before giving me your thoughts. So the way this is going to work, and again, like I said, this is all going to be indexed, so feel free to jump down and bounce out of this anytime you want and get right to the review. But in most of these videos, I'm going to focus generally on like 2 sections per video. In this one, it's going to be the comfort of the bike and the engine. The next one is going to be the suspension and the handling. At that point, you'll know most of what you need to know about this bike, but after that, I'm going to go into some deep dive videos on different components of the bike, like the transmission, which I think will be an interesting one to watch, because I have thoughts on it. I mean, everybody knows the stereotypes about the agricultural GS shifting, but I have some thoughts on that. Another one is going to be on the electronics on this bike. They are varied and deep and definitely warrant a video of their own, including my views on the user interface of this bike, which has been criticized some because the bike is so complex. I was in a ute a couple days ago with a dying battery. We had borrowed it from my brother and sister-in-law. I was sitting right there. This is at the top of a hill. And as I said, it had a bad battery. The light changed, the light turned green, and I stalled it. Oh my God, was I embarrassed. Had to get out in front of everybody, pull out my little starter battery, start that truck up. I just got out of the truck and I was like, sorry. Guy behind me was cool about it. He waved, he was like, yeah, I get it. Certified zip tie mechanic, that's pretty good. So yeah, I'll weigh in on the UI UX along with what I think is a solution to the problem, and hopefully BMW will be listening because it's a good one. I'm also going to do a video on the 719 hardware. That'll be a shorter one. I'll be comparing the 719 hardware to the hardware that comes on the regular GS's. And then the one that all the BMW haters have been waiting for. Oh my God, they're gonna be so happy. And hey, look, BMW haters are people just like the rest of us. They are human beings. They're not a subspecies or anything like that. They're people. They have lives and families and dreams, and they hate GS's. So they're gonna love this one. They get their own video. This video is gonna be the stuff that I don't like on the GS, and they're really gonna love this because I'm gonna rant. There's not many things I don't like about this bike, but there are a couple of things that annoy me that I do wish the BMW engineers had taken a slightly different approach on. Now, they're all nitpicks. Not one of them do I actually think about while I'm out riding this bike. But it's still, you know, relevant information to some people, and it's got to be discussed. And then finally, I'll do a conclusion video to put a bow neatly on it and let you know if I would buy this bike again in the same position that I was. And that'll be that. Okay, well, I've been talking about that for a long time. I'm hoping to keep most of these videos around 10-15 minutes. This video is going to break that rule, mostly because of that longer than it needed to be intro. So, the BMW R1300GS. This is the 2025 Tramontana Option 719 edition, which I think looks very nice. As I said, the first thing I was going to talk about is the comfort of the bike. And the reason for that is just because when I was going through this test riding process of testing all the bikes on my way to buying this one, it was the first thing I noticed when I got on the bike. Was it comfortable or was it not? And this bike, well, TLDR, it's a GS. Yeah, it's comfortable. It's really comfortable. The rider triangle, everybody copies. You know it's comfortable. I have actually purchased a set of handlebar risers that offset the bars back towards me about 3 centimeters. But I don't know if I really need them. I just want to try them out. Mainly for when I stand up, because when I stand up, I'm leaned forward a little bit. But I do also want to try having my arms slightly back more towards me. It's pretty comfortable right now. Like, I don't feel uncomfortable at all on this bike, ever. It's very roomy. The seat is nice and big and wide and flat, and you have a ton of room to shift around and get into different positions, which when you're doing a long ride is key. Talking about the seat. This might be the controversial part of this section because I like a firmer saddle than most people do, I think. And this saddle's pretty firm, and I think it's great. I think it's one of the best saddles I've ever sat on. Up with the Tiger 900, not the current one, the one right before this, the first version of the Tiger 900 had a pretty firm saddle that some people complained about, but I rode that bike and I thought it was super comfortable. The current one is also really comfortable. But if you don't like a firmer saddle, this one might not be for you. I will say though, I'm at 6,500 kilometers and it has broken in nicely. So give it a chance before you drop the money on a sergeant seat or whatever you want. I mentioned that the grips and seat are heated, and the first time I ever rode, actually no, the second time I test rode this bike, not this particular one, the tester over at Elite Motorcycles in North Toowoomba. The second time I rode that, it was a very cool day. It was somewhere between 5 and 10 Celsius, or between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was wearing this jacket, which is a Klein Marrakesh, which is a mesh jacket. And underneath it, I was wearing a t-shirt. But I had the heated grips and the heated seat both on 2, and I was super comfortable. You know, something about having a heated seat, it keeps your core warm, and yeah, it makes a big difference. This bike is an absolute weapon in cooler weather riding, especially because you get heat off the cylinder heads on your legs, which might be viewed as a little less comfortable in the summer. And there were days when I was out riding this bike in the summer where I was like, oh, that is a fair amount of heat dumping onto my legs. I'm not really going to take any marks off of this bike because of that. The reason being is that is not a BMW GS thing. That's a bigger motorcycle thing. You know, if you're riding something over 1,000 cc's, then you're riding something that's putting out a lot of heat. And it just so happens the cylinder heads are right in front of my legs. If it was a V-twin or a V4, there would be a bank of cylinders under my saddle, and that would be uncomfortable too. So I don't really worry too much about that. And it's not like it's unbearable or anything. It's just, you know, something I notice when the temperature is like 35 degrees and I'm riding in the sun. It's nothing that would keep me off this bike. So, and it's something that'll absolutely get me on this bike on days when I wouldn't have gotten on the Kawasaki, when I'd be like, oh, it's a little too cold today. Nope, never too cold on this bike. Now, comfort-wise with the GS, you really have to discuss the windscreen, because the windscreen on this bike is so good. And honestly, it might be the most improved part of this bike over the 1250 platform. And that's a pretty big thing to say. We'll discuss the engine more later, but a lot of people would say the engine is the most improved part, or the handling. But no, I say the windscreen is, because the windscreen on the 1250, it looked cool. It was a cool looking windscreen. But it was just not good. Like it gave the wind coming off, it was very turbulent, and it would just batter you around the head and shoulders. And it was very loud, and it made it a less pleasurable experience. I think a lot of people, I think a higher percentage of people change the windscreen on the GS 1250 than on a lot of other bikes. But this one, man, BMW, they went into the wind tunnel and they did their homework, because It's a windy, blustery day today, and I'm getting no turbulence at all on my head or on my shoulders. The wind is actually hitting me. I have this in the fully upright position right now, and the wind is actually hitting me about that much above my visor. So basically, right at the vent of the helmet, which is convenient. And the thing is I have this up all the way because I'm recording right now, and it cuts down on noise into the microphone. But when I'm riding without recording, I generally have it about here. Even when I'm doing 100, 110, this is just the right height for me. It keeps the wind noise down. It smooths out the airflow, but it still gives me some airflow. If I'm doing anything under 80, I generally have it all the way down. Now, I'll take a moment to discuss it being an electric windscreen, because this is notable. It's the first GS, I think, to have an electric windscreen, and it is beneficial. The thing that I really have found myself doing with this is making very micro adjustments. Like I'll lower it a centimeter, or I'll raise it a centimeter. And that will often be all the adjustment that I need to increase or decrease the amount of airflow over me according to whatever I'm feeling at that moment. It's the old system they had, the little screwy thing, that was fine. You know, it did the job, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't as good as this. But yeah, I can't talk enough about how good this windscreen is. So I'm just going to leave it at that, because you don't want to watch a whole video on how good a windscreen is. Okay, I hope that didn't sound too disjointed or anything, but that's it for comfort. It's a GS, folks. 10 out of 10. All-day comfort. Get one, jump on it, go crush a continent. It might be a tick less comfortable, maybe 2 ticks less comfortable than GSA, but it's really close. Oh yeah, I should mention too, the crash bars on this are excellent for putting your legs out like this. You don't want to leave them out there for too long because they'll start to cook, but it's nice. You know, when I have my foot on the foot peg for too long, my knee just starts to tighten up a little bit. And just being able to just throw it out there for a few seconds and not just hold it out in the air like a gimp makes a difference. It adds to the comfort. So there you go, even more comfort. Bonus comfort if you get crash bars on the GS. Okay, moving along to the engine. The famous, or to some people, infamous Boxer engine. Look, I mean, so much has been talked about and written about this engine. You know what it's all about. You probably even know what the 1300 is all about. It's got a great amount of torque. It's really punchy. It's easy to ride. 145 horsepower and 149 Newton meters of torque, or 110 foot-pounds of torque if you measure it that way. It's a lot. It's a really torquey bike, and that makes it a lot of fun to ride. I was initially concerned when I bought this bike about the power delivery of the GS. I was thinking, okay, am I going to be having fun on this bike after 6 months? Well, I've owned this bike for closing in on 6 months, and the answer to that is a resounding yes. This engine separates itself to me from past GS engines in that fun is one of the first descriptives you'll use. Like previously, the first adjectives you would use would be torquey or practical or easy to ride or something like that, smooth, whatever. eventually you would get around to fun. But with this engine, fun is one of the very first things you're going to think. This is a fun bike to ride, and a lot of it has to do with this engine. I have a blast riding this thing. Yeah, you get into the turns with this bike. You get into the twists and turns. It's just a joy. You think about twisties a lot, and of course you think about, you know, sport bikes, keeping them on the boil, letting them sing a little. Well, I honestly think in a lot of ways this bike is better, because it just is instant power the second you, like, there's no worrying about keeping the RPMs up or anything like that. If you're in a gear too high, it's not really a big deal. You still have a ton of torque. You're still getting a ton of push out of that turn. It makes it fun, and it makes it easy. I've heard some people say it's a downside of this engine that it's too easy. They're nuts. They just made the Panigale a lot easier to ride. Does that make it less fun? I don't think so. Haven't heard anybody say that. So I have found the engine to be very enjoyable. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say that this is the best all-around engine for riding on the road. I'm not really going to comment about off-road stuff. As you know, I'm not an off-road rider. If I was going to do that, I'd probably just buy a dedicated dirt bike. For me, on this bike, I'm going to be on the road 99% of the time, and then 1% will just be going down a fire road to a campsite. But on road, you want to ride this bike easy? Okay, it's there for you. You want to ride this bike aggressively through the twisties? It can do that too. You need to go to the local coffee shop to fulfill the GS stereotype and get your Starbucks? Done. You need to run some errands? It's perfect for that. Like, it's just great at everything. And still, it's fun. Yeah, I really think overall this is the best imagining of a good solid handful of horsepower and torque for road riding purposes. Unless you're really a specialist, unless all you do is just bomb crazy twisties all day long, in which case you might just want a sport bike, but you might not. I guarantee you, you're going to have just as much fun on this bike. So let's talk about the modes for a minute. The modes on this bike there's 7 different modes: Eco, Rain, Road, Dynamic, Enduro, Enduro Pro. Was that all of them? I don't know. And that's a lot of modes, and it gives you the ability to switch through 4 of them. As you can see, I have Rain, Road, Dynamic Pro, and Enduro Pro. I'm not really sure why I have Enduro Pro in there. I just added it one day. I'll probably take it out and play around with the Eco mode a little bit. But the difference between Dynamic and Dynamic Pro and Enduro Pro is the Pro versions are really there for you to set them up to your own tastes. And I have set this up to my taste. I have it really as close to being edgy as this bike will get. I have the traction control really low. I have the throttle response as hard as it can kick. And when you switch this bike into dynamic mode, yeah, the throttle response becomes much more urgent, In fact, I'll talk about this more when we get to the suspension video, but the whole character of this bike changes when you shift into Dynamic Pro mode, or Dynamic, either way. It becomes much stiffer, much more of a weapon. And I like it. You know, it's the same, I'll say the same thing, well, I didn't actually say this about the windscreen, but I will now. One of the really good things about this windscreen when you raise and lower it is there's a very noticeable difference from low to middle to high. Some bikes, you don't really notice a difference. And it's the same with modes. On some bikes, they have different modes, but you don't really feel much, if any, difference. On this bike, going from road to Dynamic Pro is like pulling over, putting the kickstand down, getting off the bike, getting onto a very differently tuned bike, and taking off. It's a really noticeable difference both in the engine, with the throttle response, and with the suspension. And then when you're done with that, you just bring it back into road mode, close the throttle, and there you go. It's you still have full power, but it's a gentler throttle response. The suspension is softened out. You kind of glide over everything. Looking at the other modes for a minute, if you shift into rain mode, all of a sudden it's really noticeably less throttle. I think it actually does cut the horsepower down to like 110 or 120 or something like that. The suspension feels like it softens up a little bit too. I might be imagining that, but the throttle response is very, very different. And those are the three main modes that I use. I haven't tried out Eco mode yet. I do want to do a video at some point on trying to hypermile this bike. Just put it into Eco and go out on the motorway and just ride for 3 or 4 hours and see what kind of fuel economy I get versus doing the same thing in road mode. Another real strength of this engine is how smooth it is. Here I am doing about 90 kilometers per hour in 6th gear at 3,000 RPM, and it's just burping along, happy to go down the road. If I open the throttle, it still has plenty of overtaking power. That's kind of what I mean too about it being easy to ride. You don't have to worry about what gear you're in. You don't have to worry too much about downshifting. If you want to pass somebody, you just open the throttle and away you go. And when I'm at 110 on this bike, which is the cruising speed on the highway in New South Wales and in Queensland, and that's about 70 miles an hour. This bike sits at about 3,700 RPM. Smooth and comfortable. See how it all ties in? Yeah, it's hard to fault this engine. I will point out that there is that hole at 5,000 RPM, which is a feature in most big bikes nowadays because of the Euro 5 emission standard, or the Euro 5 Plus emission standard, I think it is. And it does die at about 8,000 RPM. What is going on here? It does die off a little bit at about 8,000 RPM. 99% of riders, 99% of GS riders are never going to notice either of them. And I'll tell you why. First of all, the hole at 5,000 RPM isn't very deep. You don't really notice it that much unless, well, I don't notice it that much unless I'm really paying attention. If I'm just cruising along and I woof it up over 5,000, you know, I'm not saying, oh man, this is a travesty. I can't believe this hole in the power. To be honest, the way the GS delivers power, you're probably shifting at that point anyways, unless you're really going for it. And speaking of, if you're getting this bike up to 8,000 RPM to where that power dies, you're going really, really fast. This is a 1300cc, 145 horsepower engine. That's not the top of the class by a fairly long shot, but it's enough so that you have to be pretty respectful of that power. And when you're at 8,000 RPMs, you are hauling. Yeah, so for the vast majority of us, those downsides aren't going to be a problem. And I wouldn't worry about that at all. If you are worried about the hole at 5,000 RPM, get yourself a test ride of one of these things. See if it bothers you. See if you even notice it. Most regular human beings, you know, people who aren't professional motorcycle testers or professional racers, or even like a really good club racer, probably won't even notice it, to be honest. Nothing like being behind a caravan driver when you're in the twisty section. That'll teach me to go for a ride at this time of day. But I think that's it for now. Hopefully I've kept this video under 30 minutes. I'm going to try and keep all the rest of them under, like, but that's it for now. I hope I've managed to keep this video under 30 minutes. I'm going to be trying to keep most of the rest of them between 10 and 15 minutes max. I don't want them to be too much overload for anybody. And yeah, thanks so much for coming along for the ride. I hope you get out on one of your own soon, and I hope even more so that you get back home from it safe. All right, you guys have a great day, and I hope to see you next time.